All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Friday morning. Jen says y'all have been minding your manners so far, so let's see if that is holding true. And yeah, as things look right now, everything looks pretty okay. Don't see any major accidents or slowdowns in the Columbia area, so that's a good start to your Friday. Currently 81 degrees here in Columbia. Highs today only going to get up to 91. Do have some rain expected a little bit later on as well before we get into the high 90s as the weekend goes along into early next week. Stay safe, stay hydrated. So weather and traffic here on the game. Nine o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point here on the game. Tyler Head along with you. Weekend has almost arrived. No, it's very hot outside. Actually, today's not going to be all that bad. It's 91 degrees compared to what's going to be the rest of the weekend, 95, 96, before we get into 99 on Monday. So hopefully you can enjoy today's break in the weather. I don't know if you can even call it a break in the weather. Whatever it is, hopefully you can enjoy it today and have a great weekend ahead, as we are only 50 days away from kicking things off on August 31st between South Carolina and the Monarchs of Old Dominion. We, of course, have SEC Media Days coming up starting next week. Jay Terry and Elijah will be broadcasting live all week long from out there in Dallas. We'll obviously be hearing from a lot of the coaches. They'll be pulling people from all over the college football media landscape. Maybe even Commissioner Greg Sankey again to sit down with us and get some insight into what's going on as we enter the new SEC with Texas and Oklahoma coming in to the fold. Speaking of the new SEC, and I'm going to dive into this a little bit more later on in the show, but I want to present it to you because I'm interested to know what your answers would be. If I gave you a blank slate and I said, hey, I am restarting the SEC, and I need you to pick 8 teams using any criteria that you want, what 8 teams would you choose for your new SEC? And again, I'll dive into that a little bit more later on in the show, but I want to kind of put that bug in your mind, be thinking about that, and submit your answers on the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. And again, we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. But as we sit here on this Friday, of course, it is the dog days of summer where there's not as much happening. ESPYs happened last night. Major League Baseball still going on. But recruiting truly never, ever sleeps. And we know that to be true. And for South Carolina yesterday, they got some good news later on in the afternoon.
This journey has been a blessing, and I am grateful for all the coaches and schools that gave me opportunity and the chance to be making this decision today. First off, I want to thank God, my family, friends, all the coaches who have coached me along the way, and everyone who supported me to this point. And with that being said,
for the next 4 years, I'm going to University of South Carolina.
That was yesterday afternoon. Lex Cyrus, 4-star wide receiver prospect for the 2025 class, making his commitment to South Carolina as he's a Pennsylvania State kid and from Harrisburg. And there was a lot of indication that it seemed like Penn State was going to be the school that he wanted to attend, it being an in-state institution, obviously a program that is very relevant as of right now with what James Franklin has done up there. But in talking to Wes and Chris yesterday on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. They gave us good reason to be optimistic that this might end up going in South Carolina's direction, and it did indeed do that. So he adds himself to the South Carolina's 2025 recruiting class. And we'll get into all the specifics about Lex Cyrus and what exactly he brings to the table a little bit later on in the morning when we get our guy Wes Mitchell in here, who, of course, has been following this recruitment from the jump. But, this kind of commitment may, in a way, help the what we've dubbed the three-star mafia breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. And when you look at South Carolina's class per the On3 industry rankings, Lex Cyrus comes in as the highest prospect in that class as of right now, with the industry score of a 9.99. Brian Rowe, another wide receiver, comes in just below him at 89.49. And again, when we're looking at across the board industry rankings, that brings South Carolina up to having, 5 4-stars in this class so far. Yes, you did lose Shamari Earls the other week to Georgia, but still, you do have a good collection of talent that you put together so far, and there's still plenty of time left in this 2025 cycle to build this class up more and more. But I understand the angst that those of you out there have had when it comes to South Carolina recruiting as of late. It really seems like over these past handful of weeks, just about every single commitment has been a 3-star talent. Now, we all know star ratings aren't always indicative to how somebody is going to perform once they get to the college level. It's just merely a, projection of what their talent is from what they proved in high school, what they've showed in camps, and how they're evaluated to be. It's not the end-all, be-all of how good or bad somebody is, going to be. It boils down to the development of players once they get at the college level. Now, yes, being a 5-star guy, maybe you have a little bit less development needed compared to somebody that's maybe a 2 or 3-star, but nevertheless, everybody needs to develop when they get to college to turn themselves in to that high-level player that, can go on and play in the NFL or, whatever it may be. But again, I understand why people are so quick to maybe turn a nose when you are getting those 3-star commits. Because, while again, the star rating is not always indicative of what happens. If you went out and signed a class of 25 stars, guess what? The majority of those guys are probably going to end up working out pretty well. There may be a handful of them that end up being bust or don't live up to that 5-star potential, but the rule of thumb is the more 4 and 5-star talent you bring in, the better off you're usually going to be. So when you see South Carolina, pulling in a bunch of 3-stars all together, you're looking around saying, well, what's happening? What's wrong with this? Why are we not recruiting at a higher level? And Wes and Chris will be the first ones to tell you this, and they're not just blowing smoke when they talk about these guys, but a lot of the guys that South Carolina's gotten at that 3-star level have been undervalued because maybe they come from a smaller school, maybe they haven't got as many eyes on them, and haven't had the chance to continue to climb in the recruiting rankings. Case in point, Jaquan Holman, who committed to South Carolina a couple weeks ago, linebacker from in-state in Blackville, recently rose to being a 4-star as far as the industry rankings go. So, those kind of things can obviously change over time. So it's not something you have to hit the panic button on just because your last 4 or 5 commits were all 3-stars or something like that. And in a way, I was thinking about this last night, in a way, the angst that people feel when it comes to not getting commitments from 4 and 5 stars left and right, I think is a compliment to what Carolina's been able to do from a recruiting standpoint so far in Beamer's tenure. We'll exclude the 2021 class because that was, not totally his class and you're dealing with COVID and all that kind of stuff. We'll put that to the side. Since Beamer's been here, they've signed a top 30 class and 2 top 20 classes. And, they've been able to pull a couple of 5-stars over the course of those classes as well. So, and I think a lack of having somebody that is that 5-star, what I like to call shiny object within the class, probably, is a reason for people maybe being a little bit more upset because at least in classes past, if you signed, hey, 2, 3 stars in a row, you can say, well, at least we got this 5-star guy that is committing to us, or we know is going to be committing to us. And we don't have that guy as of right now. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but you don't have that, deferral to make it, I guess, seem like everything's all right to people that are, upset about 3 stars committing or whatever it may be. But again, I think it's testament to just how well, Beamer and company have done so far. And you're not guaranteed to land a 5-star in every single cycle, and especially a place like South Carolina where, they're not historically ones that have pulled in those guys at a high clip. You're going to have years where that just doesn't end up happening. That's okay. Again, it really boils down to how you develop the talent that you have and help them and mold them into becoming great college football players that can help your program, and obviously for their standpoint, eventually get them to playing at the highest level. And Beamer and staff are known to be good recruiters. And so when you couple a 5-7 season with a recruiting class that maybe isn't quite as shiny and, something you can brag about as much as some of the past classes, I can understand why fans may get a little bit easily frustrated. And, we've talked so much about Shane Beamer's perception and the perception of this program nationally a lot here as of late, because it was a program that was, again, on the rise, took a step back last year. Now I think a lot of people are wondering, okay, what does this mean? Are you going to continue to go low? Or are you going to be able to rebound and go back, higher up again? And we're just going to look at what happened in 2023 as the exception and not necessarily the rule. CBS, a while back, put out their off-season power rankings for all FBS coaches. So all 68 teams in the FBS, they ranked coaches 1 to 68 based on, the perception of the coach, the program, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Beamer's place in this was actually pretty interesting, and we'll dive into that coming up next on the Extra Point. I do want to remind you once again that the Game and Hardee's are teaming up to make schools, students in the Richland 1 and 2 school districts make sure they have all the supplies they're going to need for the upcoming school year. You can bring your donation of school supplies this Saturday from 2 until 4 p.m. to the Hardee's at 100 Creech Road out in Blythewood. Our guy Elijah Campbell from the postgame show going to be hanging out there for a couple hours. You can bring him your school supplies, hang out, talk some sports with him as well, and you also get some Hardee's coupons if you do end up bringing that school supplies. We'll dive into CBS's power rankings of head coaches at the Power 5 level, Power 4 level now, I guess. Where does Coach Beamer fall in that? With that coming up, it is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday, navigating through, roughly the halfway point of July. Once we get into next week, we'll officially be halfway through the final month without football, as August brings us NFL preseason, week 0, and this year, because of the way the calendar falls, week 1 of the college football season, which we are very, very excited for. We're always so intrigued, or at least I'm always intrigued, about the perception of South Carolina football nationally. You know, here in this little bubble that is Columbia, as well as the state of South Carolina, we're hyper-focused on what's happening with the Gamecocks. It's, for one, it's our job here at the flagship of South Carolina, but two, the vast majority of people in the state love South Carolina. So they pay attention to what's happening with South Carolina. We have conversations about what's happening in South Carolina. But, you know, from a national standpoint, South Carolina is not a team that gets talked about every single day. So I'm always interested when South Carolina is getting discussed. A, what's the reason why they're being talked about? Is it good or bad? And two, what is that just general perception of where South Carolina is in the realm of relevancy when it comes to the greater landscape of college football? And in particular, talking about Coach Beamer, who, again, is, obviously leading the ship here and is the one that was hired, 4 years ago to take what South Carolina was under Will Muschamp, which was a team that was underperforming, popped off, had a good season, had a good season there. Back in 17 or 18, and then was able to, not able to do much, in the way after that. And Beamer was brought in, which is a risky hire, of course, because he'd never been head coach before, saying, okay, take over this program that you're familiar with, program that you've coached at before, and a community that you know before, and take it from where it's been to the next level, to get it back to where Spurrier had this team, which, again, if we rewinded the clock and put the 12-team playoff implemented in 2008, then South Carolina would have multiple college football playoff appearances because of how well, Coach Spurrier had this program, a little over a decade ago with 10-win seasons and, going to big bowl games and all that stuff. So CBS Sports put out their rankings. They do this every single year, and it's not just the folks at CBS Sports. They also collaborate with 24/7 Sports to kind of come together and form this power ranking list of every what's now Power 4 head coach from 1 to 68 prior to the season. And the guidelines for this are very open-ended. It's not one set of criteria like wins and losses or what the coach has accomplished in his career or anything like that. All that stuff certainly factors in, but it's truly a hodgepodge of different pieces of criteria from different people within the college football industry to come up with this list. Shane Beamer is 46th on this list overall, down from 40th where he was this time last year. And I will read you what the synopsis is for Coach Beamer according to this list. It says, after leading the Gamecocks to bowl games in his first 2 seasons, Beamer's team took a step back last year. South Carolina finished 5-7, and their 3 SEC wins came against teams that were combined 4-20 in conference play. On the flip side, the Gamecocks were competitive in nearly every game they played, so there's a sense they're not far away from a bounce-back season. And that last little sentence there is where the optimism for this program and this season come into play. It's like you weren't really that incredibly far off. Again, we've talked about it. The Florida game, make some stops on 4th down in the 4th quarter there, you probably win that game. Clemson game, if you can put any semblance of offense together, you probably win that game because it was obviously tight and low scoring. So you could have been 7-5 if a couple different factors get changed in the back half of the season there to where, I don't know if we're jumping for joy at the fact that South Carolina went 7-5, but I don't think we're, as worried as some people are going into the season if that were to have been the case, the case last year. And being 46th on a list of 68 basically means you're the beginning of that last third of the list. So if you divided 68 by 3, you get roughly like 22.3 something. So you kind of split it up into segments like that to where, again, 46th is kind of right at the start of what is the third segment of groups of groups of coaches when it comes to a list like this. And I think what matters more than anything else on a list like this is the company that's around you. What coaches, what programs are around Coach Beamer, because I feel like that, reflects on where this program is based on the other coaches and other teams that are around South Carolina. And what I kind of take away from reading this list the way that I do is the coaches around Beamer stand out as ones we're not 100% certain about just yet, or they're leading programs that are in a bit of state of flux or uncertainty at this point in time, and we're not quite sure which way they're going to go. A couple of examples. I look at Neal Brown at 42. This is a guy that we all thought going into last season was going to be out of a job by season's end because of how West Virginia had fallen off under him. Well, guess what? He went out there and he coached himself back into the good graces of the folks up there in Morgantown by leading the West Virginia to a 9-4 season. So that hot seat conversation went out the window real fast up there. Now, that being said, everybody's wondering, okay, was that just a one-year flash in the pan, or is this a for real West Virginia team that's going to be competing for the Big 12 championship this year in what's a very wide open conference, as we talked about a lot of times this week? Billy Napier is at 47, one behind Shane Beamer. They obviously slitting your number 2 over under him, missed a bowl game, and the question is, will they continue to fall? Now, of course, they have probably the toughest schedule in all of college football this year. But will they continue to slide in the wrong direction, or will Billy Napier be able to help them find a foothold this season that they can build off of going forward? And that's not to say that, Florida goes out there and goes 9-3 or something like that, but if they went 7-5 and made a bowl game, that's at least a step back in the right direction for that program. So again, the curiosity there of not knowing which way these programs are going to go based on what they did last season. And then you have a group of new coaches around him. You have Kirk Cignetti at Indiana at 43. You have Manny Diaz at 48 out there at Duke. You have Sharon Moore, who's taken over for the national champion Michigan Wolverines at 52, where the question with those is, what can you do out of the gate? And again, anytime you fire a coach or a coach leaves and you promote a new one, like in the case of Michigan, you have the question of, okay, what's this guy capable of? Now, with the exception of Sharon Moore, Cignetti and Diaz have been head coaches other places at high levels, so you get an idea of what they bring to the table. But you don't know for sure how it's going to work out with your individual school. And Sharon Moore obviously getting promoted from being an assistant to now being the head coach. You just really don't know what to expect with him. So, again, looking at the list that way, I think it makes a lot of sense why Shane Beamer is where he is around some of these other programs, because there was so much optimism, right? Going into year number 3 after what you accomplished, overachieving, as I brought up many times before, doing better than the nation thought you were going to do in the first 2 years, to where everybody was saying, hey, maybe this could be another 8-win team. Maybe they could jump up to 10 wins in 2023. That was certainly a point of conversation at times last year going into the 2023 season. And then you went out there and went 5-7. You missed a bowl game. And now we're sitting here wondering, going through this long summer, okay, is that an anomaly? Was that just an example of a bad season? Every coach has a bad season. I mean, the greatest coaches out there, you can look and find years where you went, ugh, what happened there? But the great coaches always find a way to rebound and get things back on track pretty soon thereafter. So it's like, okay, do we look at a 5-7 year and say, you know what, some things just went sideways, you had some injuries, all that kind of stuff. Let's push that aside. That's not indicative of what South Carolina football is, and let's get back on track. Or is it like, man, or are we going to be looking back on that years down the line saying, well, it's kind of the beginning and the end there, that he came out hot in the first couple years, but that year number 3, after that, it was just all, tumbling downhill and getting worse and worse and worse. We don't know. We're going to have to wait until the games are being played to see how that plays out. Again, South Carolina's got a very tough schedule this year. If they can go 6-6 and make a bowl game, that checks my boxes. That satisfies me. Not every fan out there is going to feel the same way. You're entitled to your different opinions, but I think if you get at least 6 wins and find a bowl game, you're at least moving back in the right direction to where I think if when this list comes out next year, if that were to be the case, Beamer would probably move up a spot or 2. Not a crazy jump like 10 or 12 spots or something like that, but maybe find themselves into the low 40s. And again, this is just the opinions of national pundits across college football. At the end of the day, what matters is what happens on the field and what's going on in the football facility, just across town from us here. But it is always intriguing to know what's being said about your program, what people think about South Carolina when it comes up from these national standpoints when talking about the big stories going on in college football. So I'm always interested to see what people say about Coach Beamer and the program itself. All right, I put out the challenge at the beginning of the show to come up with your own version of the SEC. Only 8 slots available. Any criteria that you want. Create a new SEC. I'm going to dive into mine coming up next, and I'll tell you what all this is for as well as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head with you on your Friday on the game. Oh, it is a busy time with our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Tomorrow night, you got boxing on tap. Get ready for a legendary night in the ring. Unbeaten IBF welterweight champion Jaron Enos defends his belt against number 8 welterweight David Avancian. Watch the whole card wall to wall with views at Twin Peaks. You can, again, head down to Twin Peaks in the Vista to check that out. And next week, 15th through the 18th, it's the Bikini Week Costume Party, featuring a bikini costume party all week long and specials on your favorite summer beverages, including those 29-degree draft beers to keep you cool, refreshing cocktails, and cheap shots. You can bring the crew and grab a watermelon margarita or any drink of your choosing to try and beat the heat. Again, all this happening in the middle of summer with our friends over at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in, Extra Point. Tyler Head with you on your Friday morning. It's time for our Talking Hardwood segment brought to you by friends over at Georgia Pacific. And today we are talking realignment, restructuring, creating a new conference. As realignment has been headline news constantly. I don't even want to just say in the past year or so. It's really been going on for over a decade now. And so much has changed in the past 15 years alone. I mean, you go back to where conferences in college football were in 2010 and 2011 compared to today and what we're getting set to do in 2024. It's a 180-degree shift, right? Nobody in their right mind would have ever predicted, hey, guess what? Southern Cal and UCLA are going to be in the Big Ten, and the schools within the same state as them, Stanford and Cal, I said Southern Cal and UCLA are going to be in the Big Ten. The other schools within the state, Stanford and Cal, are going to be joining the ACC. Yes, the Atlantic Coast Conference. Like, it's insane and ridiculous, right? But we know why these things happen. It's money, it's media markets, and it's schools looking out for themselves at the end of the day, which I can understand the last part and really understand all the parts, but it's just unfortunate that it's kind of wreaked havoc on what we know college football to be. And I thought yesterday, what if we just completely started over? What if I gave you the assumed power of creating college football to being whatever you wanted it to be, and you could create your own conference based on whatever criteria is deemed important to you? We'll stay hyper-focused on the SEC here in this scenario, and I want you to create a new SEC with only 8 teams in it. So, that way you have to make some tough choices on who you keep and who you end up cutting. But, again, this is completely open-ended. If you want to say Oregon deserves to be in the SEC, that is perfectly fine. Whatever you think the best version of the SEC would be based on your criteria, go for it. And why I want to do this is because I think this list, your list individually, my list as well, will show what you value the most in what a conference is. So my list, if I were creating an SEC from scratch using only 8 teams, I would go South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and LSU. So based on that list, what stands out the most to you? Well, what does my list say about what I care about when it comes to the structure of my college football conferences? Should be geography, right? The original premise of college conferences was grouping together schools in these little pockets around the country to be able to play each other. And that, in turn, made travel easier. Now, again, we do have to go back 100 some odd years ago to where, nobody was hopping on planes and flying as easily as they do now. So that has certainly gotten easier, which has allowed us the ability to open up these conferences a little bit more. But I put that to the side because that doesn't necessarily matter to me. What geography is also did was allow us to create great and rich rivalries within college football. Not just in-state rivalries, because that's more of a natural thing. Like, yeah, South Carolina and Clemson, it's going to be a rivalry because you're sharing the same state. You're the two biggest programs in the state. That makes a lot of sense. But also these border type of rivalries as well. And I know it wasn't, it isn't recognized as an official rivalry in the SEC, but what South Carolina and Georgia had of being schools that were so close to each other. You know what I mean? Georgia was the closest SEC school to South Carolina, and I'm trying to think. I think Auburn would be a little bit farther. I want to say South Carolina would be the closest SEC school to Georgia as well. So you had a natural rivalry that was built in because of that. And through restructuring, even within the SEC, both Georgia and South Carolina are still in the SEC, but because of realignment, because of getting rid of divisions, they're not going to play each other or at earliest until 2026. You know what I mean? So those kind of things, when it comes to realignment, have always bothered me, that we just completely threw geography out the window, which again was the basis for the reason why so many of these conferences were created in the first place and why we've been treated as so many great rivalries in the history of college football, because geography was the main, or one of the main points in creating the conferences in the first place. And based on those states that I used, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, those are all what I deem to be the actual Southeast. You know, the Southeastern Conference is traditionally held, been pretty close to what its name represents. You can debate, all right, Kentucky, you're getting a little bit out of the Southeast, you're getting more to the Midwest there, but, for the longest time, it held true to what its name represented. Then we started adding teams from Missouri and Texas in there, and now Oklahoma and Texas. Like, okay, now we're just stretching halfway across the country. But those states that I listed there, I don't think anybody's going to deny that is the true Southeast of the United States, which, again, makes the name make sense at the end of the day. Look, brands are important, right? And some of you may use that as your criteria for creating your own SEC, and brands are important to me too, but using the criteria that I used of geography, we still got some very good brands represented in this SEC. Georgia, Alabama, LSU. Obviously, Florida's not what they once were, but Florida is a brand that gets a lot of recognition when they are at the top of their game. Obviously, Ole Miss is a program that's on the rise as of right now. So those things are important. And again, when you add these teams into the mix, you get some of that, but it's not the end-all, be-all when it comes to me with how I'm creating my own unique version of the SEC. Media markets also matter, and that is something that is featured within this as well. You've got very solid media markets within my what I deem the true SEC, with Atlanta. You've got Jacksonville. You've got Birmingham. You've got Charlotte, Raleigh, not Nashville. Obviously, Columbia here is a top 100 market. Like, you've got good media markets based on this list as well. But again, as I said, that's not my main driving force, main motivation for making these moves to this version of the SEC. And again, this is all hypothetical, but I'm doing this from the standpoint of wanting to know what you value the most when it comes to what a conference is. If you think it is brand power, if you think it is truly what happens on the football field, what a team has accomplished in the last 10 years, that is totally fine. You are totally entitled to that opinion, and I will not ridicule you because of that, because that's what you in your heart believe is important and should be at the top of the checklist when it comes to creating these conferences. Again, I'm a geography guy. When I used to play the old NCAA football video games where you do like a Road to Glory, you had to, where you're actually the student athlete themselves, you had to take class, choose a major, and you take tests periodically to make sure you remained eligible and all that kind of stuff. And I always chose geography, sports geography, that is, to where, would ask you hey, what town is Michigan State in? You'd say Lansing. You know what I mean? So those kind of things. So geography has always been something at the top of my mind when it comes to sports in general, but particularly college sports. So I hate the fact that this realignment has just completely destroyed these little pockets of the country that had their own unique flair and representation to them with the style of football that they played and what schools are being represented there. Now we literally have three conferences, almost three conferences that go coast to coast, because the Big Ten certainly does. You got Rutgers on one coast, you got the California schools, and now Washington and Oregon on the other coast. You've got the ACC, which the majority of its teams are on the Atlantic coast. Now you have a team, one in the Midwest and SMU, and then two in Cal and Stanford that are legitimately on the other side of the country. Their state touches the Pacific Ocean. And the Big 12, they go as far west as Utah and the and the Arizonas now, but still they go as far east as West Virginia. So they're very close to just being the completely across the map like the other two conferences are. So again, geography went out the window a long time ago, and I know it's not going to revert back to that norm, but that's something that I hold for high importance when it comes to what I look for in a conference. So, again, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what your conference would look like. 803-404-6100 on the Firehouse Subs text line. We'll hit some of those coming up as we wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Intern Joe from Gamecock Central is going to jump in here with me in hour number 2 as he does each and every Friday. It's all coming up. It's the Extra Point here on the game. Welcome back in, Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the game. Want to let you know that Jay and Elijah today are going to be broadcasting live out at Craft and Draft, 2706 Divine Street, right here in Columbia, from 3 until 6 for the post-game show. It's one of the 12 locations you can use the Craft Beer Passport, by the way, which you can go online to 1075thegame.com, click on the Sweet Deals tab, and purchase one for just $79. $360 value, by the way, all yours for just $79. So go hang out with Jay and Elijah today from 3 until 6 out at Craft and Draft on Divine Street, have some beer, and just have a good time. Get set for a weekend and try and stay cool if you can. So I posed the question of, if I gave you the blank slate and I said you're in charge of creating a new SEC for me featuring only 8 teams, what 8 teams are you going to choose? And my reasoning for this is to see what you value most in terms of what a conference is. Again, I went geography-based with Carolina, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, and LSU. And I went for the premier institution of said state with those corresponding states that I chose. So interested in your answers. Got some UA in the Firehouse Subs text line, which I appreciate. 404-6100. Monty weighs in and says, my 8 teams will be Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma. These are the only 8 that have a legitimate year-in, year-out chance of winning the conference or winning the national title. So Monty doesn't actually include South Carolina in his list at all because he is valuing what is happening on the field. He is valuing, hey, I want my conference, the SEC, Monty's version of it, to be the best and most powerful version that it can be, with 8 programs that I think every single year are going to have a shot at competing for the national championship. Florida is actually an interesting one to add to that list because they've not been in that conversation for the national championship in a while, but we know Florida is always that program that we feel like is only 1 or 2 steps away from getting back to where they were in its heyday with Spurrier, the mid-2000s with Urban Meyer, whichever one you choose to use. So that's an interesting list there, Monty. Certainly appreciate you weighing in there. Josh weighs in with his list whenever it ends up loading. See, let's try this again. While that loads, I will actually go to, I asked Jay and Elijah this exact question yesterday of who they would pick to be in their new version of the SEC. And Elijah went with what he calls his Burger King list, where he'll have his way, where geography matters and prestige is measured by all programs in no particular order. Says Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Ole Miss. So he couples the geography in there as well, but prestige also matters to a degree with what he is doing with his list. So let's try this once again. All right, Josh, his list is going to feature Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, and Auburn. Another list that actually does not include South Carolina. This list is actually, I don't know if it's exactly the same as what Monty's was, but pretty similar, where I think that prestige of teams that are always going to be relevant for the national championship is very important to what Josh is viewing with his version of the SEC. And again, you look at this list, and again, outside of Florida, who again is a program that at least has that history of winning national championships not all that long ago, I can understand why you might go down that path with those teams, because again, they're all teams that are going to be very relevant more often than not when it comes to the national championship in that conversation. Let's see, Charlie weighs in. His new SEC is South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Florida State, Alabama, and Auburn. So Charlie is factoring in those premier in-state rivalries as a big reason why his conference is built the way that it is, because you have the Iron Bowl, you have Florida and Florida State, and you have South Carolina and Clemson making up 6 of the available 8 spots there within his conference. And maybe proximity matters a lot too, because Georgia and Tennessee being the other 2 schools, that's not all that far apart from each other either. So proximity of schools near each other seems to be something that Charlie is factoring in heavily when it comes to his new version of the SEC. Dameron going to weigh in with his South Carolina, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. Again, I think Dameron's kind of in that same realm with what Charlie had on his last list, where that proximity, schools being very close to each other, having those in-state rivalries stay intact does matter a lot. I think it's also funny that Georgia Tech was, in the SEC 100 some odd years ago. The SEC hasn't been around for 100 years, but you get the point. Way back in the day, around the World War II days, Georgia Tech was actually in the SEC. So in Dameron's case, they would actually be returning to the conference and keeping that in-state rivalry of clean old-fashioned hate. With Georgia there, same thing again, Iron Bowl stays intact with Auburn and Alabama, and then the Egg Bowl with Mississippi and Mississippi State. So again, this is an interesting exercise that I wanted to throw out there, and I appreciate you guys weighing in and adding your list. Actually, I'll slide in one more here. Dante just weighed in. He would go Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, North Carolina, and Duke. And he says he's also thinking about other sports like men's and women's basketball, where, obviously that Duke aspect of it in North Carolina would bring you a lot of prestige and a lot of eyeballs when it comes to men's basketball. And that's a good way to look at it too. Now, we know football is kind of the cash cow and ends up driving everything, which is why these conference realignments happen anyway. But that men's and women's basketball aspect is not a bad thing to look at either. Again, thank you guys so much for weighing in on this on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. I was just curious to see what what you think the SEC should look like if you had the opportunity to create it, and what matters to you when it comes to what conferences are in their structure. That'll do it for hour number one. Hour number two of the Extra Point coming up next. Intern Joe from Gamecock Central going to jump in here with me as he does each and every Friday. We're going to talk a little college football playoff and make our official 12-team brackets. It's coming up next here on the Extra Point on the Game. Welcome back in hour number 2. It is the Extra Point here on the game. Tyler Head, intern Joe from Gamecock Central, hanging out with him as he does each and every Friday. Didn't get to see you last week because, of course, we were off for the day after the 4th of July. So hopefully the holiday treated you well, as you and I were just talking about before that, before we came back from commercial here, that it's, for many of us, the last actual break that we're going to get until we we get into almost the new year, it seems like.
Yeah, just about March, Tyler. It's not looking forward to everything being back in being back in the swing of everything with football and basketball starting up again, and then we got baseball on the tail end of it. But yeah, March or May, I guess, so after the men's basketball tournament, is when we will rest again. So it's good. It's good. The video game's coming out. It was one domino that needed to fall till we were officially back on football. So the video game will come out, occupy us for 3-4 weeks till we're winning, 3-4 championships with whatever dynasty you may venture into. And football. Summer camp starting. August 1st, I believe. So
yeah, we got SEC Media Days coming up next week. Yeah. So we'll hear from all the coaches and all the players we learned. Obviously, it's going to be Boogie Huntley, Debo Williams, and Luke Doty representing South Carolina coming up next week, which I feel like those three guys are good representatives for what this program is, well-spoken guys that can kind of convey the message that, Beamer wants them to convey. And I don't think anybody out of that group is going to start too much controversy next week. So hopefully South Carolina can go through the week without any issues.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love the three choices for SEC Media Days. I know there were some people saying, Lenora should go. And, I understand that logic a little bit, because essentially what you would get to do is say, okay, yeah, we're really underrated. We're really, doubted and all this stuff. And then essentially have the opportunity to go, prove everyone wrong and be like, yeah, look, you did doubt us. But I think that's a gamble that, you don't necessarily want to play. Lenora isn't as proven. These three guys are guys that have been in this program, know what it's all about, and as has been, kind of the way of the water for Shane Beamer and his SEC Media Day choices.
Well, the thing to me that if you brought Lenore Sellers next week, that basically ends the quarterback competition, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because he named Sellers as the starter coming out of spring, which meant, hey, we're still going to have a competition probably all the way up until the Old Dominion game, or at least most of the way through fall camp to determine who the starter's going to be. So, yeah, if you brought him to Media Day, it's like, well, Robbie Ashford's the backup, Lenore Sellers is the starter. That's a pretty done deal, which we all is assumed to be the case. But from a coaching standpoint, I get no, we want to make sure we're vetting this to the nth degree before we do anything as far as naming a starter.
Yeah, and I could see that being more or less from Lenore's standpoint, right? Because as soon as you give a kid like that the bone, or at least the fact that, it's like, oh, it's a done deal, he's signed, sealed, delivered, starting, you worry about if a kid can get complacent. Now, I'm not saying Lenore's will get complacent or is a complacent type of person, but I think that's why, they're saying, oh, it's still a competition and whatnot, stuff like that, just to keep Lenore's and everybody, in that quarterback room disciplined, working towards a steady goal. If you, call the QB competition and, in June without an established starter, guys are going to wonder what the heck is going on, try to hit the portal, something like that. So, it makes sense. And again, I think Boogie Huntley and all those guys represent the university well. So we're going to get some good quotes out of them. And it's a long trip over there to Dallas too. So long flight.
Yeah, and Jay, Elijah, and Terry are going to be out there all next week, and we'll be hearing from coaches. They'll be pulling people from all over the SEC and all over national college media to discuss what's been going on, not only with Gamecocks, but the greater landscape of college football. You mentioned the video game. We are 1 week away from the official full release of the game, only, 4 days away now from the early release of the game. If you did buy the early download of it, I think the download actually starts this weekend, so you can have it geared up and ready to go when it does drop coming up at the beginning of next week. Now, did you download it? Did you pre-order it?
Yeah, I game share with a couple of my brothers back home. Okay. So I just said, I'm like, all right, screw it. I'm just gonna buy it. I was roped into buying Madden too, because when the pre-order, whenever the pre-order dropped, I was like, all right, I still kind of want all the stuff that comes with it or whatever. If you pop open Ultimate Team, which I'll be doing a little bit later in my journey, Dynasty first as always. But I did. I bought the deluxe edition that comes with Madden, which I probably won't open Madden for a couple months.
See, that was my thing, because I have said before, I still got to go out and actually buy a PS5 over the course
Yeah.
of the next week. That's priority number one, obviously. But I was thinking about, like, yeah, I can buy Madden this year, but I'm like, I don't think I want to dedicate that much time to Madden. I want to focus as much on college football because it's been so long. And in fact, I'm already planning. I have one more game left of NCAA 14. I have a national championship game in Dynasty mode. That's going to be my final farewell, my curtain call to say goodbye to a game that served me well for 11 years, and then I will transition to the new game. So I want to focus as much as I can on college football 25.
Are you going to bury that PS3 or PS? Yeah, I guess the PS3, right?
PS3, yeah.
Bury that PS3. There was somebody on Twitter who was burying his PS3 with college football in it and said, "Thank you for the ride."
I'm not going to bury it. I'm going to put it in a very special place.
Yes.
To where it's not going to get damaged, and if I want to come back to it later down the line, I certainly can. But no, I've made sure I've kept my disc of NCAA 14 in good shape. Really, it's honestly never hardly left my PlayStation in the past 11 years because I break it out every year just to play that game. Like I don't really play anything else on it, but it's kept that alive, and my PS3 can finally be at peace.
Yeah, we have an Xbox 360 back home in Indiana, and I'm sure that if we tried to open the disc thing, it wouldn't. Like NCAA football just hasn't come out of that thing for a decade or close to a decade, right? Like so. I totally get it, Tyler, and I'm excited for the game too. I'm going to try to see if we can get a little streaming, a little stuff like that for my show on Sundays, as it is the off season. So we do need some content and stuff like that. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's the hype behind the game, the detail behind the game. It's ridiculous.
If you need someone to go 1v1 with, I'm down with it.
Little guest play caller,
right? So you mentioned Ultimate Team, which has been a feature in Madden for a long time. We're actually going to get something like that in College Football 25 that's going to feature stars from yesteryear, guys that have been greats in college football, which they've done to a degree in years past before in some of the later editions of NCAA football. But one thing that's been talked about a lot is the greatest players that we never got to see in the video game. Now, if you're like me and you downloaded the rosters every single year, you could actually play with these guys, but they were never official members of the game in the actual copy that you bought initially of whatever game that it was. So I wanted us to now draft our version of kind of a dream team of guys that we never got to see on the NCAA football video games. So anytime between 2014 and this past year are fair games. So it breaks down as to one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, and then one player from defense. So that could be an edge player, a defensive tackle, a cornerback, whoever you want to use as your defensive player. So I'll let you get the first pick with quarterback.
For the quarterback, and I'm prepared for this, Tyler. You sent me a text yesterday, and I came prepared for this. So my quarterback is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks we've ever seen play the position. I have Lamar Jackson, former Heisman winning quarterback Lamar Jackson. I think within that span, it's undeniable.
I figured you might go that route from an electrifying standpoint. I think playing with Lamar in I guess that would have been NCAA 16 is the first year, would have been like Vic and Madden 04. Yeah. Like he just would have been a cheat code.
Especially with the read option physics too.
Yeah.
Because like it's just quick and whoop, see ya, gone. Quarterbacks aren't supposed to do that. So that's my pick.
And I imagine a lot of these guys in this list might end up being Heisman Trophy winners, and that's okay. I'm going to go with another one. He put together perhaps one of the, if not the greatest seasons of college football ever. I got to go with Joe Burrow. 2019 Burrow was just on another level. Yes, he had tremendous talent around him, but dude was just lights out. The moment was never too big for him. He had that swagger, that confidence. Like Joey B would have to be my guy.
Yeah, I love that pick. It's 1A. Lamar and Joe Burrow were 1A and 1B for me, and I figured Lamar just simply because of the read option.
We'll go snake draft here, so we'll jump down to running back.
All right.
I think this guy should have won the Heisman Trophy, and the fact that he didn't still bugs me to a degree to this day. I got to go Christian McCaffrey at running back. Dude did everything when he was at Stanford. Caught passes, ran the ball, obviously, kickoff returns, punt returns. Like, he was a five-tool weapon at Stanford, and obviously has translated well to the NFL as well. But I would have to go with CMC as my running back. Yeah,
my running back, sticking with the train of Heisman winners, I've got Derrick Henry His card was unstoppable in Madden. I can't remember which Madden that was, but there was one of them where, I mean, he was unstoppable. I just can't imagine, like, add that in the read option, maybe put him in at fullback, but then a card like that would also have, the speed to get to the outside. So Derrick Henry, that pick kind of serves as also name any Alabama running back. Bo Scarborough can fit in, and because I mean he was bouncy and athletic and all that. So
I will say I believe Henry was actually featured in the last game.
Yeah.
In 13 because he was
true on his way out.
Third running back that year.
Yeah.
He really kind of emerged in that Sugar Bowl that season, but he was number 27 and he wasn't number 2, and his ratings probably weren't all that great. So the Derrick Henry we came to know was not well represented in NCAA 13. So I will give you a pass on that one.
Fair enough.
All right, so wide receiver.
My wide receiver, I had Jamar Chase.
Okay.
I think that was another undeniable, just you have to go that route. And now I have a couple picks that make you think a little bit, but I think these were all, just right up on top of the board.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And obviously he was paired with Joe Burrow in that unbelievable offense that LSU had back in 2019. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I got to go back to another Heisman Trophy winner. Probably my favorite wide receiver to ever watch in college football, Devonta Smith at Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he does not look like he should be as elite of a wide receiver as he was in college football. And, that is the one thing, as weird as the 2020 season was, what he did that year was just – because I've always said, for a wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy, you have to be stupidly good. You have to be head and shoulders better than everybody else, and that's exactly what Devonta Smith was at Alabama.
Yeah, that 2020 season was lights out. Smitty, made himself a lot of money that season, that's for sure. Really worked his way up, into the first round and all that, and winning a Heisman as well. So that was another, 1A, 1B choice for me. I mean, it was Smitty or Jamar Chase at wide receiver.
All right, we'll go to tight end now, and how can you not? I got to go with Brock Bowers.
Yeah. Pretty easy. I mean, Georgia boy yourself.
But dude has.
Yeah.
There's no doubt he was the best tight end in college football in his time over the past 3 years.
Yeah. My pick will have some debate for that, but I mean, Michael Mayer was arguably better.
Okay.
It was statistically, it was having close to a better season than Brock Bowers was until it got to the SEC championship game and all the postseason stuff. So yeah, Notre Dame is also tight end U too. I think you can make a good case for that. So I think if my pick is not going to be Brock Bowers, it's going to be a Michael Mayer or Durham Smythe or kind of underrated guys.
I had Kyle Pitts as my second option.
Yep.
So.
Fair enough. I mean, Pitts is a wide receiver, though, in my eyes.
Yeah.
Essentially, he played tight end at Florida, but, I mean, he's more vertical, so.
That's true. All right, last one, defensive player. This will be your pick.
All right, yeah, my defensive player is kind of my, sleeper one. I got Cam Smith.
Ooh,
as a number one cornerback. He had a card in Madden not too long ago. And I think it was his draft card in Madden, it was unbelievable. Just a lockdown, shutdown corner. And obviously you got to throw a Gamecock in, and there's got to be one guy you got to throw in your lineup.
Well, mine list did not feature any Gamecocks, unfortunately. I went with Chase Young.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, you could have taken the Bosa brothers, Chase Young, Myles Garrett. There's a lot of good options.
Were off the edge
if we're just picking one guy when it comes to defense. But something about a guy coming off the edge and having double-digit sacks, that's always going to check the box for me.
Oh, yeah, as it should. And the Bosa brothers, too. It's another good one. T.J. Watt is up there. Just a game breaker. But, Cam Smith, my dog. Think about when you have, a Travis Hunter over a wide receiver, and you could just throw Cam Smith on him and have all your problems be taken care of.
So that's our list of players we never got to play with in the official NCAA football video games that we would want to see on our list. One thing that's going to be new with all of college football, especially when you talk about College Football 25, is the 12-team college football playoff.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to put together our bracket, middle of July, 50 days till kickoff. Who do we think is going to make the inaugural 12-team college football playoff? With that coming up, it is The Extra Point. He's intern Joe from Gamecock Central. I am Tyler Head on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head, intern Joe from Gamecock Central hanging out with you on this Friday. Again, our last segment there, we gave our list of guys that we never got to see in the original NCAA football video games that we would have wanted to play with. And we had a texter that weighed in the break there that says, y'all forgot about Barry Sanders. I didn't even think about guys that were around before the game.
Before the game, yeah.
That wasn't like on my list of criteria, but I guess that's possible too. Like if you wanted to play with anybody prior to, 1992, because that was when the first Bill Walsh college football game came out, that you kind of have free reign. I didn't even think about that, but that is a good pull if we were going to pick a running back from yesteryear, that Barry Sanders would probably be a pretty good choice.
There's a bunch of guys. Jim Brown, I'm sure, would go nuts.
You got George Rogers, Walker.
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost too impossible of a list because
oh yeah, definitely.
When you look at things from an 11-year standpoint, I think it's a little bit easier to say, okay, here's my quarterback, running back, wide receiver, as opposed to, all right, for the previous 100 years of college football before the game existed, who would you pull?
Bo Jackson.
That's not a bad.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson could probably play every position, if we're being honest out there.
They did that with Madden this year. They had him playing every position for like his scouting card or his draft card or whatever. I don't know. But they used to do those old guys justice with those Heisman moments and whatnot, which was good.
You give me a team of 11 Barry Sanders in his prime, I think that could be just about anyone.
Yeah. I mean, they would survive the grind of the SEC, that's for sure.
So I posed the question to you yesterday is, we are now 50 days away from kickoff. I feel like this is a good round number to do something like this.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead right now and make our predictions for the 12-team college football playoff. I'm going to save this, by the way, and we're going to revisit this in December and see how accurate we were in picking the 12 teams that we think are going to be playing for the inaugural 12-team college football playoff.
Yeah, sounds good. I've got my list ready. We'll see. This is going to be a crapshoot.
All right. So again, the way it's formatted is the top 4 conference champions, which we assume are going to be from the Power 4 conferences, will get first-round bye. So we'll just kind of go in order here with your conference champions from each conference. Who do you have winning in the SEC?
Georgia. Whoa dogs. And I didn't say that allegedly, but I think Georgia's coming out of the SEC. I think everyone knows it too.
All right. I agree with you on that. Again, I think they're a team that has a shot at winning the whole thing. I'm not just saying that because of my ties there. I mean, you talk to anyone. I think Georgia is going to be the overwhelming favorite going in to the season. Big 10 champion.
Ohio State. I think Michigan takes a step back, and then the sleepers in the Big Ten, like the Minnesotas, the Wisconsins are still, the Penn States, if you will, are still kind of a couple years behind from really making a run here.
All right. Hard to disagree with you on that one. Also have Ohio State. And they're my number. I'm going in order here based on my seeding.
Yeah.
With SEC and Big Ten getting the top 2 seeds as we kind of assume is going to happen. Big 12, the new Big 12, very wide open. Who do you have winning that conference?
The new Big 12. I mean, it is kind of a toss-up. And Oregon's in the Big 10 now, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So I don't know, because I've got Oregon. They're one of my top 4 teams.
Okay.
Top 4 seeds, but I don't know. I gotta go look at Iowa State maybe.
Okay.
Good shock. So Oklahoma State also up there. I mean, if Mike Gundy can figure out the Ollie Gordon situation,
You can come up with a better answer than he gave the other day.
Yeah, I know. Then giving him here's what I'm going to do: give him the ball more. So I don't know.
All right, then your ACC champion,
Clemson. Unfortunately,
Clemson. Okay.
Yes.
I stuck in line. I stayed with Florida State.
Yeah.
I think Clemson's going to have a bit of a bounce back year, but I'll stick with Florida State. So that's our top 4 seeds. Now you have 8 spots.
Yeah.
You can put, you got to have one Group of 5 champion in there. You got free reign to do whatever you want with these final 8 spots. I'll go ahead and ask, who is your Group of 5 representative?
I didn't have a Group of 5 representative in there because I kind of forgot about the tie.
So you have to have one. You got to have one Group of 5 champion because that's the format of the playoff. So you can go Boise State, Liberty, who played in the Fiesta Bowl last year, Tulane.
Liberty, Tulane. Yeah. We'll go with App State.
App State. Okay.
App State could make a little run here.
App State has a very easy schedule this year, so a good record for them is not outside the realm of possibility. I went with Boise State for mine.
Yeah.
They have the 71st toughest schedule. They play Oregon, probably going to lose that game. If they still win 11-1 with lost Oregon, I think that's a very credible schedule that could get them in the college football playoff. All right, now you got 7 spots to fill with literally whoever you want. Who are your 7 at-large teams?
My at-large, I have I've got Texas. I mean, because they're in the SEC now, right? So
Yep.
Texas is one of my other SEC teams. I also have Ole Miss and Alabama rounding out the SEC.
Okay.
My sleeper's Kansas. I got Kansas making it in as the 12. That would be the 12 seed, but I'm not really going in any particular order here. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish making that playoff. Not ranking wise, I don't see it very high. I also have Florida State as an at-large.
Okay.
I think they lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game somehow, in the most Clemson fashion of all time. I also had Oklahoma State, but that's you already got them right
Okay.
for my Pac-12.
Yep.
Slide in Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Michigan could make a little bit of a run as well. Not certainly the heights that Harbaugh took them to last year, but you never know. Like when a program gets, or when a monster has its head cut off, right? The more heads grow back, kind of theory.
Here's what's crazy. We almost have the exact same list
Yeah.
of at-large teams. So, and I actually seeded mine as well. So I had Ole Miss as my 5, taking on who I think the Group 5 representative will be in Boise State. Oregon at 6, representing out of the Big Ten, taking on Kansas as well. I thought I was crazy. And Kansas, yes, they're on the up and up now with Lance Leipold, but just the fact of saying Kansas might be in the college football playoff seems insane to me,
Wild.
considering what the program's been for basically the past 15 years. But I got them as my 11. I also think Notre Dame, very, very workable schedule this year. I think if they
Very
play Florida
workable.
State, that might be
A&M week
one
1.
loss. They have A&M in week 1, which I think they'll probably win that game. But a very workable schedule for them, and they don't have a conference championship game. So if they go 10-2, 11-1, that might be enough to lock them in.
Yeah.
We'll see. I had them as my 7, taking on Alabama as the 10 seed. I got to give Bama the benefit of the doubt. Until they show me otherwise, you have to put Alabama in your college football playoff. I just feel like that's kind of a rule of thumb.
Especially after what Kalen DeBoer did with Washington last year. It's not like, Saban's gone and they're hiring some Joe Schmo. They DeBoer took that program to new heights, so it's a perfect guy for the job.
And then my final first-round matchup, I got Texas as my 8 seed, so I have 5 teams. 4 teams represented in the SEC with Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas taking on, and this is where we differ a little bit, Penn State as my other Big Ten representative. Penn State is perennially a 9-10 win team, which has never been good enough to get in the 14 playoff. If they continue on the way that they do, they should be a regular fixture in a 12-team playoff. I'm not saying they're going to get very far, but they should at least be in that first round more often than not.
Yeah, Oregon certainly helping out the Big Ten quite a bit, because now it's not just going to be Michigan and Ohio State. And then you also have kind of those, edge teams, if you will. The Penn State's, Northwestern could have a good year, right? Like
Northwestern playing in front of 10 people on that stadium by the lake.
Like the wind chill and the lake, all that lake effect snow.
That's going to be so fun in November.
Oh, I can't wait. UCLA or Southern Cal or Oregon. Going to the Lakefront Stadium at Northwestern in Chicago in November. No, thank you. I do want to see it. I'm sure they can get a pretty cool whiteout. And Northwestern does. Under Armour does them right with those Under Armour jerseys. So,
Right.
I would love to see a little whiteout over the
One of the
lake.
few remaining schools with Under Armour now, by the way.
It's true. It's true.
South Carolina might be looking in a different direction when that contract is up. We'll see.
I would assume so, and we'll have those conversations as that comes closer, but there's a lot of different things you can do, and everyone's disgruntled with that Under Armour contract, it feels like.
I want to switch gears to baseball coming up next. I have thoughts about the All-Star Game uniforms. We can't keep doing this. I will hit that coming up. He's intern Joe from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head. It is Friday on the Extra Point here on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head intern Joe from Gamecock Central.
Oh, yeah.
Along with you on this Friday, and we'll talk more video games coming up at the end of the hour. I have another quiz ready to go for Joe, as I like to do each and every Friday. So he's unprepared for this, as I've not told him at all what this is going to be about. So we'll get to that coming up in a little bit. I want to switch gears over to baseball, though. It's coming up next week. Got the MLB All-Star Game. All-Star Game's such a funny thing, right? Where I think for the most part, people don't care a whole lot about them. Like, the NBA All-Star Game sucks. The Pro Bowl is a flag football game now that I can't tell you the last time I even watched one. But Major League Baseball's All-Star Game is so unique in the stance that it gives you the closest thing to the real product than any All-Star Game out there. You know what I mean? Because, like, baseball not being the contact sport, you can actually get a good, legitimate baseball game out of the All-Star Game, and that's actually fun to watch. Like, I will watch the MLB All-Star Game every single year from that standpoint of it doesn't look that drastically different than what you see on a night-to-night basis. And, you know, you got teams from all over the place. There's festivities, the whole 9 yards. Got the Home Run Derby coming up on Monday night. A lot of cool things happening with the All-Star Game.
Yeah.
One thing I cannot get behind, though, is this insistence to make everybody wear the same uniform during the All-Star Game. Forever, the All-Star Game allowed guys to wear their own uniforms from whatever team they played for. And unlike, you know, football or basketball, where I get it, you want to have guys wearing similar jerseys because you have a fast-paced game, you're passing the ball, all that kind of stuff. They got to know who to tackle in football. I get why you can't do that kind of thing with football outside of wearing a different helmet. Baseball provided such a unique opportunity where you could wear your own unique uniform, represent your team and your league at the same time in the All-Star Game. And we've gotten away from that.
Yeah, I don't like it, Tyler. And especially when you keep remaking these just kind of ugly, gaudy, MLB All-Star unis every year. And I mean, I get, like, you know, you want people to buy them or whatever, but I think when you wash down the specialty of an All-Star jersey and you keep making them as gaudy as you are, there's no way, like, people are still buying this, right? I think jerseys would sell more if you sold a team, just a regular team edition with an All-Star patch on it or a couple All-Star patches on it, get it decked out, throw a patch, make it look real nice and pretty. And, you know, I don't know, Tyler. I'm with you. I don't know why they keep making it, because in baseball, it makes the most sense to be able to, you know, wear your own, you know, team's jerseys because you have the dark and the light. It's a very clear and an obvious distinction between the two teams.
So for those that haven't seen it, this year's All-Star Game is in Texas. So they have kind of a Texas flair to them. You got kind of that, like, I don't even know what font you would call this, but it's like the old Texas type of font. On the front, where each team will either read American League or National League. You will have the All-Star Game insignia on one sleeve, and then whatever team you play for on the other, in addition to your name and number on the back of it. There's just too much going on here.
They look like BP unis.
Exactly, and that's for the longest time you wore the whatever league you're representing in workday, warm-ups, and the Home Run Derby. Which that is fine. Yeah. If you want to wear that as your representative, that's cool. But when the game actually starts, wearing your own unique home uniform or away uniform, depending on which side you're on, was such a unique part of the All-Star Game. And so they experimented with this in the early 2000s, went away from it, and then I guess the first All-Star Game after COVID, which is 2021, they went back to just having American and National League specific uniforms in the game itself, and we have it straight from that sense. I will say, in 22, they had, it was like wearing your home uniform with an all-star flair to it. So you had like the gold lettering and numbers.
Oh, yeah, true.
I liked that. That was fine.
Bad. Yeah.
Because you're at least, again, representing your team with your own uniform with an all-star flair. But since then, we've just gone back to, all right, it's American League or National League. And, I mean, these things, they look like beer league softball jerseys, if we're being honest.
Yeah, that's a great analogy there. They definitely look like just batting practice beer league softball jerseys. I'm going to add a layer to this take, Tyler, and feel free to prove it if you like it. But I think guys should also be able, like, if their team like has like a City Connect, if you will. Because, like, Luis Robert could wear, you know, the South Side, like the White Sox ones, even though he's not going to be a White Sox for very much longer. You know, I could see guys doing that. The Phillies, you know, Bryce Harper pulling up to an All-Star game in those blue Fightin' Phils jerseys.
Sure.
Like, that would be awesome. And, let guys, have that call. And, again, like, if you throw an All-Star patch on any of because everyone knows who it's for.
Sure.
Right? And really commemorate it. That's how you make all your money. Because I would much rather, buy a jersey if, say Luis Robert was winning the MVP, was clear and obvious cut favorite for the MVP. Like, I might spend a little extra for that All-Star jersey if he does something crazy.
Yeah, I think that would be neat. And that's actually a good point that you bring up, because why do they make these jerseys? Because they know people are going to buy them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, hey, my player played his first All-Star game. I'm going to go buy his jersey now because it's got his name on it or whatever. But with the City Connects, which, again, Nike pours a lot of money into, you have the opportunity to show it to so many more people. Because, again, baseball's a niche sport for the most part, where you're watching your team, and you'll catch highlights of other teams, but you're not typically watching other teams at full length more often than not. So you have the opportunity, if they decided to do all City Connects, like, hey, National League, wear your City Connect, American League, wear your City Connect, you open up all those unique, specifically designed uniforms to an entire bunch of people that probably haven't seen them yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not, and like MLB, if you're listening, it's not a cop-out excuse to say, oh, just wear the City Connect. No, think about how dope that would be, because the City Connect jerseys, the most of them. Now, there are a couple that are a little hideous, but the most of them, for a lot of it, are, good jerseys. And I mean, I'm not going to, I think the White Sox have the best ones in the South Side, but I mean, I'm sure there are people on the text line and listening that disagree with me there. But again, I don't know. I think you got to get away from these basic jerseys eventually, because people are going to stop buying them. And then, it's just going to float back away from it. And the MLB is going to be stuck with a conundrum on their hands, besides just, upset fans who just want to see, the old school jerseys and everyone wearing jerseys like all that.
Yeah, and again, I would take the City Connects over, nothing in general at this point in time. And there are a lot of great City Connects out there. Some of them are a little iffy. I do think the South Side ones that the White Sox have are probably one of the coolest in all of baseball. And again, really pays homage to what they represented their city, which is the entire point of them. And I think that'd be a cool way to do that for the All-Star game. But unfortunately, people that get paid a whole lot more than us make these decisions, and we don't.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, I don't think Rob Manfred is listening to the show today. But if he is,
Rob Manfred doesn't listen to a lot of things that people say.
That's a good point, especially from his own players. Imagine that, right? So.
Well, and he probably, like you said about the Commissioner's Trophy of the World Series, it's just a hunk of metal. It's just a game. Yeah. Who cares, right?
Exactly.
That sounds like something Rob Manfred would say.
Yeah, way to sell your own.
Good one on that, Bub. By the way, a lot of people still can't watch the Braves because of blackouts.
Oh, that's another, alleyway to go down. We stream our games allegedly.
Right.
Yeah, right.
The completely legal streams. Right?
Yes, totally. I don't know but they need to fix the blackout problem too. That's a disgrace. Turning fans away from their own team is a disgrace. I think it just. I don't know how we even got to that, Tyler, where we got to the point where the same thing with Sunday Ticket and whatever too. How simple does it have to be to just sell single team streaming packages, and if you care about the rest of the league, pick up a couple I don't know how that wasn't the way that they're trying to do Sunday Ticket now is the way it should be. Where it's just you buy it for your team and get to watch your team's games.
Right.
Why was that not the case in the beginning?
Because much like the NCAA with NIL, they were doing it until they couldn't get away with it anymore.
That's a good point.
Now we're seeing there's a legal fight going on with that. So we've just fixed the MLB All-Star Game. Let everybody wear City Connect jerseys. We'll all be happy. They'll sell more of the City Connect jerseys because the general public will get to see some of the ones they haven't seen yet, and we'll all be happy, right?
Everybody's happy.
All right, we'll come back. We'll wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. Intern Joe is going to be quizzed on NCAA college football. He doesn't know what exactly yet. We'll hit him with that coming up. It is The Extra Point. He's Intern Joe from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head. On your Friday, here on The Game. Welcome back in. Is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, intern Joe from Gamecock Central hanging out with you on this Friday. We started off this hour talking about best players we never got to see in the EA Sports College Football video game for the past 11 years that we would have wanted to see on the field. Now it's time for our regular Friday quiz where I test intern Joe's knowledge, this time about cover athletes for NCAA football. Now, I'm not in the same studio as you. I'm producing today, so I'm going to hold you to the honesty here that you're not looking this up as I try and quiz you on this.
Yeah, it's going to be horrendous if I don't look it up, so here we go.
All right, so I've got, let's see here, 6 of the previous editions of NCAA football. You have to tell me who was on the cover of each one. A personal favorite of mine, NCAA 11.
11. Was that Tebow?
That was Tebow.
Yeah, I know. That was good for one, Tebow.
That was the first one that I ever bought on PlayStation 3 because I got a 3 for Christmas, and like the next day went to GameStop, and I was in high school. I didn't have money to drop on the new game, so I found like a $10 used copy of NCAA 11, and I played the crap out of that game. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I was still on the GameCube at that point. First NCAA game that I really picked up was NCAA 12, I think, 11, NCAA 13. So I was late to it. So I only had 2 years of prime childhood when it came to it. But yeah, I definitely remember the covers, and that one in particular because he's wearing the blue Nike Pro Combat.
Right, and it's that thing where he's screaming at something going on, really intense. But yeah, that would have been the year after he left. College football. As
they had to do it back in the day, Denard Robinson.
All right, NCAA 05.
05? Vince Young?
No, that's a good guess. How about Larry Fitzgerald?
Larry
he was
Fitz. At Pitt. Wow. Yeah, that's a blast from the past for sure. No, missed that one there.
Yeah. I never had a copy of 05. I had 06, I had 03, 07, and 08. But 05 was the last game before they brought in what is now Road to Glory. It was
that's awesome.
It began as Campus Legend or Heisman, Race to the Heisman. But 05 would have been the last game before that.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Shout out Larry Fitz, man.
Yeah, back in the day at Pitt, great wide receiver. Obviously, great NFL career as well. All right, this is gonna be tough. NCAA 08.
08. Ooh, because I know who was on the cover of Madden 08, because Madden 08 was one of the greatest video games of all time. That was Vince Young for for the Titans, whatever. NCAA 08. Like a Sam Bradford or something?
No, I didn't think you were going to get this. Jared Zabransky.
Yeah, no shot.
Jared Zabransky was the quarterback for those Boise State teams.
Before Kellen Moore.
Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, the Statue of Liberty, the trick play.
Yeah.
That was Jared Zabransky. Now, he never did anything after college football, but he can at least say he was on the cover of NCAA 08.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet, actually. Shout out to Jared Zabransky.
All right, I'm going to go back to the 90s on this one. How about NCAA 99?
Oh, boy.
Now, let's think about this.
I'm trying.
Did you watch the great Heisman Race of 98 documentary? For 30 for 30. Okay. Think about the greatest college football players of 1998, 1997.
Is this like a Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker kind of? No, it's
it's actually defensive.
Defensive? Oh, Charles Woodson.
It is Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
Charles Woodson was on the cover of NCAA 99.
So he was. I forget who was in the Heisman race with him.
It was him, Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf.
Yeah.
At Washington State, and then Randy Moss.
Yeah, Randy Moss was the other one. Yeah.
Yes, Charles Woodson got on the cover.
Yeah. Makes sense. Good
Two
guess.
more here.
Hell yeah.
NCAA 06. Now, this was a bit of a throwback cover. Not somebody that had played in the past handful of years. This was a guy that had been out of the game for a little while. This was billed as a Heisman edition because that's where I believe it was called Race to the Heisman.
Barry Sanders was on the cover, right?
Not Barry Sanders. He was on the cover of 13 with RG3.
Yeah. I was just saying that one was another one. it's a Heisman-winning running back, right?
Not a running back.
Not a running back. Wideout.
Kinda.
Kind of. Tight end.
Not a tight end.
Not a tight end. Kind of a wide receiver.
Kind of a wide receiver. Think about it.
How do you be kind of a wide receiver?
Well, you may play more than one position.
Play more. Dion.
Not Dion.
No.
You're close.
Close.
Think early 90s, though.
Early 90s. Two-way player. I don't know. Who?
Desmond Howard.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Desmond Howard doing his
Interesting.
Heisman pose was on the cover of NCAA 06.
Michigan guys. As a Notre Dame fan, I think my brain
You
is
have lapsed
devoid
memories of it.
Michigan greatness before I was born.
All right, last one here. This should be a layup. NCAA 14.
Yeah, Denard Robinson. as I mentioned.
Shoelace.
Yes, shoelace indeed.
It's and Denard Robinson was a fun player to watch
yeah.
at Michigan. I think he's going to be better remembered as being the cover guy of NCAA 14 because the game got so much longevity
Yeah.
because of the 11-year gap.
Oh yeah. If there was a game, had they ended it in 15, nobody would. Denard Robinson would be remembered as shoelace.
No,
because
exactly.
and the game where Eminem was on national TV when they were playing Notre Dame and that catch and all that jazz. But no, I agree. He's gotten some run and I mean one of the better or more dynamic players we've seen in college football.
Well, and he got
in a long time.
He got drafted by the Jaguars as an offensive weapon. Didn't really pan out much in the NFL, but he could do literally everything back in the day.
He gave us fits at Notre Dame for years. I mean, just because, every time you knew, and he played for, I believe, the Rich Rod teams at Michigan. So,
Right.
Blast from the past, man. Telling you.
There's your weekly quiz. Be prepared for another one coming up next week. At the end of media
10-4.
days, we'll have plenty to talk about next week.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait, Tyler, as always. Appreciate you having me on. Per usual.
Absolutely. That'll do it for today's edition of the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with myself and Wes Mitchell up next here on the game.